Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Today we're taking a look at some Rush Duel skill leaks that have been data mined and kind of go through them and then infer from them cards we expect to be in the next Rush box, as well as throw in some predictions of what else we think might be in the box. So the first skill up is a nail skill, requirement none. Set 1 the Menacing Eyes of the Sky Emperor from your deck or graveyard in your spell and trap zone. So Menacing Eyes of the Sky Emperor is a bit of a weird spell card. We can send one monster from our hand to the graveyard already. That's not a great cost we really want to be paying. But then we can change the battle position of one monster on the opponent's field, so attack becomes defense, defense becomes attack. So this is a good way to get to your opponent's life points. But if we're specifically using it just for that, we could also just use stop defense and not have a cost attached to it at all. But if we're changing a monster from attack mode to defense mode to attack over it, because we don't actually have block attack yet, this could have some use there. But then, if we have a face-up level 10 monster on our field, we can draw one card. And as we can see, this is a Sky Emperor card. We can clearly see yugioh in the card art, and this is a nail skill. So clearly this card is meant to be used with yugioh, the Sky Emperor. Now, the problem I have with this card is twofold. First off, if we already have our maximum monster out, we then don't need to change our opponent's battle positions because we already have the strongest monster in the game, as well as the fact that if our opponent's monster is in defense, we want to change it to attack, we can do that using Sky Emperor's skill, which means we won't need this card. As well as the fact that this card does send a card from our hand to the graveyard and then draw a card if we have a level 10. We won't need that filtering to dig through our deck to find our maximum pieces if we already have our maximum. So overall, I'm not too impressed by this card. The skill will again set this card for free, but I still don't think it's really going to be worth it. And overall, I'm not really impressed with the skill or this card. So next up, we have Bluei Skill 1. So this skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are dragons, and there is at most one level 5 or higher non-fire monster in your deck. So this means our deck has to basically be full of fire dragons. One face-up level 6 or higher fire normal monster on your field gains 600 attack to the end of this turn. Then if it's a level 7 monster, you can add one Dragon's Inferno, which is our back row hit for dragons, from your deck or graveyard to your hand, but you can only do that second part once per duel. So the question then becomes, what monsters do we actually have available to us? And the best one is going to be Fire Guardian. So Fire Guardian is the best one we currently have access to in the game. It is the best kind of statted level 6 monster you're going to get outside of a legend with 2100 attack. With the skill, we could boost this thing up to 27, which does clear 25s, which actually is somewhat relevant, and this could actually see a little bit of play. But again, it specifically says that if we have a level 7, we can add Dragon's Inferno, so we're going to need a level 7 normal fire dragon, and only one monster fits that bill, and that is the Volcano Attack Dragon. This is just a 2300 2000 monster, but again, using the skill, this will become 29 and give us the potential to grab Dragon's Inferno. Overall, being able to get this guy out as a 29 isn't too impressive. Getting the back row hit on top, I guess, is a little bit better, but on the crackback, this thing will always just be a 2300 attack, which is not that great. I think the actual good part of this skill is probably just being able to use Fire Guardians as kind of Harpy Light, and just being able to boost your 2100 up to a 27 and be able to attack over things. It's probably the best thing we're doing with the skill. Overall, again, not too impressed by it, but it's neat. And it's probably going to be a good free-to-play option, especially since we don't expect Volcano Attack Dragon to be a high-rarity card, maybe an SR at most. And then we have Bluei Skill 2. Now this skill has a bit more meat on it. This skill can be used if the only monsters with 1300 or more attack in your deck are dragon-typed, and there's at most one level 6 or higher non-dark monster in your deck. Requirement none. Effect, change the original attack of one face-up level 5 or level 7, so not level 6, has to be 5 or 7, dark monster to 2600 until the end of this turn. Then if you chose Steel Striking Dragon Metageus, that was normal summon this turn, you can add one level 7 dark monster from your graveyard to your hand once per duel. So, Metageus is a pretty cool card. All of the Geas dragons do have the ability to attack monsters twice. Metageus is a little bit special, we'll go over that in a little bit, but its effect is to send one level 7 or higher dragon type monster from your hand to the graveyard, and again this is something that's also quite common against the other Geas other than Dragius. This turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's trap card effects. Also, it can make a second attack on a monster during the battle phase in which it attacked a monster. Now, notably, it does not have to destroy that monster, it just has to attack. And because this card can't be killed by battle, that means if your opponent wants to prevent their monster from being destroyed with using something like a barrier to weaken our Metagears, so we'd hit into them, our guy still wouldn't die, but we would still take some life points, we can still make that second attack because we did declare an attack on a monster. So already, this card's pretty cool. On top of the fact it can't be destroyed by trap cards. Now, that's only right now really relevant for Widespread Ruin, but it still does come up. When we use the skill with our Metagears, it will instantly go up to 26, so it only gains 100 attack. But we can then take a second copy of Metagears from our graveyard and put it back into our hand, but then discard and pay the cost for our Metagears' effect. Or if we have enough other monsters, we can distribute out a second copy of Metagears. So overall, I think this skill is actually not bad. As well as the fact we can make level 5 or level 7 Dark monsters become 2700 as well. And that comes up because in terms of the level 5 and level 7s, in the game currently, the best card for this is going to be Curse of Dragon. This is a level 5 Dark Dragon monster, so this 2000 attack monster becomes 26, which is again pretty good. It's very similar to what we were doing with the last Luke skill and Fire Guardian, except Curse of Dragon is obviously a little bit weaker. But on top of that, there are also other Dark Dragons that we could possibly get our hands on. We could get something like Stockbuster Dragon, which is not too impressive, but it could come out. Illusion Strike Dragon Mirror Geas is a card that everyone's been expecting for a long time. I would expect, though, that when this card does come out, we'll get a skill, so I'm not expecting Mirror Geas to be in this set. But then there are some others like Nightbringer Dragon or Null Striking Dragon Zero Geas, or even the Clad Skull Dragon Guy Geas. There are a lot of level 7 Dark Dragons that could potentially come out in this box, so we'll have to see which ones actually do end up coming, but it wouldn't be too surprising if we just got the Metagears when the box comes out. So next up we have our first Gavin skill. So this skill can be used if the only level 4 or higher monsters in your deck are warriors or fairies. Can be activated on turn 2 onwards. We can return one card in our hand to the deck and then reveal a level 6 fairy type monster with 0 attack in our hand and add one Semi-Ruler the Dark Summoner from our deck to our hand. So this is a pretty good way to just get a new boss monster into our hand, I guess. At the start of your battle phase and end phase of this turn, change the battle position of your face-up level 6 fairy type monsters. So first off, Semi-Ruler. Semi-Ruler is an interesting boss monster. 2500 attack, 2000 defense, pretty good stats, just like all of the other Dark Warriors that we've had so far. Its effect is that we can send one card from our hand to the graveyard to special summon one monster with 0 attack from our hand face up to our field. That monster gains attack equal to its original defense until the end of this turn. So the idea is we grab out something that's got 0 attack but a lot of defense, we cheat it out and it comes out with a ton of attack, which is pretty cool. Now the skill again does work with level 6 fairy type monsters with 0 attack, and the best target at the moment that we have access to is Urashima the Hermit, because for some reason this old man is a fairy. But this card would then come out as a 2000 attacker, so that is one option. But a card that I expect to come out with the box is the Urashima Sage. So this is a 0 attack 1800 fairy wind monster level 6. Change this attack position card to face up defense position, then change one attack position monster on your opponent's field to face up defense position, and if you do, it loses 600 defense. So the combo I expect to see is going to be use our skill, reveal our Urashima Sage, then grab the Semi-Ruler. Then we will summon out our Semi-Ruler, use its effect to cheat out a Urashima Sage, probably into attack mode, but if we're not going to use its effect, we could summon out defense mode. We then use its effect to change it from face-up attack to defense mode, then change one monster from opponent's field to defense and weaken its defense, making it easy to be attacked over. Then we'll go to battle phase, and our skill will, at the start of our battle phase and end phase of this turn, change the battle positions of your face at level 6 fairies. So now defense mode Sage becomes attack mode for the battle phase. Obviously, because we've summoned it using Semi-Ruler, it has 1800 attack. Now we can use that to attack over the monster that we changed to defense using Urashima Sage's effect. And then at the end of the battle phase, Urashima Sage will then change into defense mode, ready for the next turn, so you don't just have a 0 attack monster on the field. So it's a cute little combo that you can do, but it seems like quite high investment for not much return. Overall, I don't see the skill being particularly good, but it's interesting in the types of application you could have with it. I think more interestingly, Semi-Ruler has some other cards that it will be a lot better with in the future, such as Kime Luna the Dark Shifter. Now I wouldn't expect to get Kime Luna in like the next box coming out, but maybe in the box after, or maybe the one after that, we would expect to see this card come out. So Kime Luna the Dark Shifter is a Dark Warrior monster with 0 attack but 2500 defense. We can change the battle position of up to 2 monsters on your opponent's field. Attack position becomes defense becomes attack. So Notably, we can use this to make face-down monsters become face-up attack position, which is what this is primarily used for. Then if we changed a battle position by this effect, we could change the battle position of one face-up monster on our field, which means usually Kime Luna itself will then go to defense mode and be protected, so again we don't have a zero attack monster in attack mode on the field. So Kime Luna is a really good way to get to your opponent's life points, and it's one of the better ways that the Dark Warriors have. So another set of cards that work really, really well with Semi-Ruler the Dark Summoner is another archetype of zero attack but high defense monsters, and that is the Chair archetype. Now, chairs are an archetype that we do expect to see sooner rather than later. The later they come out, kind of the worse they're going to be, and they're already not great to begin with. Now, the reason we're expecting to see the chairs soon is because they belong to Seat Bastion, who you might have seen if you played through the Nail event. But basically, Nail has like underlings, part of the Garden of Curiosity, that work for him and are all duelists, and we haven't seen any of their cards yet. So I would expect to see some of those cards be kind of slotted into some of these other boxes, especially because none of their decks are particularly iconic, none of them are particularly interesting or doing anything particularly fun. So I think trying to have a box of just those cards would be a little bit underwhelming, so it does make sense to just throw them in as low rarity cards into other characters' boxes, like this box that we're getting, which seems to have support for a lot of the main cast. But Throne of Darkness itself is a pretty interesting card. So level 8, 0 attack, 2500 defense. If we have 8 or more monsters with 0 attack in your graveyard, we can special summon one level 7 or higher monster with 0 attack from our hand in attack position. Now, this is pretty cool because it doesn't really have a cost. It has a requirement of we have to have a certain number of cards, but we don't have to discard anything to do this, which is pretty good. So we can just cheat out another 0 attack monster. And what better one to cheat out than Dahut, the Dark Ruler of the Chest. This is a 0 attack 2400 defense monster. Send the top card of our deck to the graveyard, and this card gains attack equal to the level of one other face-up monster on our field with 0 attack times 500. So if we have a level 8 monster, like let's say Throne of Darkness, Dahut will gain 3000 attacks. So if we're able to establish a Semi-Ruler, discard a card, get out the Throne of Darkness, and then use Throne of Darkness effect to get out Dahut, we potentially can have a 2500, 2500, and a 3000 attack monster all out on the board. Now notably, this is a 6-card combo because we need normal summon, tribute for Semi-Ruler, then discard for Semi-Ruler effect, then the Throne of Darkness, and then we also have to have the Dahut in our hand, as well as we need our graveyard setup as well. So that is quite a heavy investment. If we do have something like a Currybot effect, or we have a monster lingering from the previous turn, we could technically do this play. Now the downside to this is, chairs obviously always have 0 attack during your opponent's turn, so we'd really like to see a skill like we have for the Semi-Ruler to change our chairs to defense position. But if we're able to have a deck where we can play Semi-Ruler and the chairs, and ideally have some sort of chair skill that doesn't lock us out of doing that, chairs could actually be a really fun archetype. And who doesn't love just having chairs? I mean, chair archetype is such a meme, but it's such a fun meme. And the deck is really fun, even if a bit weak. Next up, we have Gavin Skill 2. So this skill can be used if the only monsters with 1400 or more attack in your deck are warrior or winged beast types. Can be activated on turn 2 onward during the turn you normal summon a level 6 or higher monster. Send up to 2 dark warrior type monsters from your hand or deck to the graveyard, then you can make one face-up water winged beast monster on your field gain 1000 attack until the end of this turn. So this is a bit of a weird skill, but there are only 2 water winged beasts in Rush, and one of them is Blue Falcon Tengu, which we don't really expect to be seeing with the skill. The other is a new card that we're expecting to see, and that is Ice Sark the Unequaled. So it's not the greatest boss monster in the world, especially if we don't have the setup to use its effect, but it's a level 7, 2000 attack, 2000 defense monster, which are very, very poor stats. We can place 2 level 7 or higher warrior type monsters with different names from our graveyard on the bottom of our deck in any order. The special summon a level 7 or higher warrior monster from our graveyard face up to our field, which means we need to have 3 level 7 or higher warrior monsters in our graveyard because we're getting rid of 2 of them, and then we're special summoning 1 of them. Now, the skill itself will dump 2 into the graveyard, which means we only need to have 1 extra in the graveyard. And if we do successfully manage this, Ice Sark will come out as a 3000 attacker, and we'll get to cheat back a 2500 attacker as well, which, all in all, isn't actually that bad. The downside is if we don't have all of this set up, if we don't have the extra monster in the graveyard, and we just draw into Ice Sark, it's just a 2000 vanilla monster that's a bit naff. Obviously, we can still use the effect to dump the cards back and then put them back into our deck and still gain the 1000 attack, but just a 3000 attack for the turn that then goes down to 2000 is basically just a worse Ancient Arise Dragon. So overall, I'm not too impressed with this, but I think there is potentially something here. If we can somehow consistently get that extra warrior monster in our graveyard, this could be a really good way to push for some good damage, especially considering we will have access to Piercing Samurai, which will let us get to our opponent's life points, even though the skill itself doesn't actually really help us with that. On top of the fact, this skill locks us into Warriors and Winged Beasts, which might be telling that we might be getting Avian Spell strategy in the next box. This is basically Backrow Hate, but much like the Beast and Beast Warriors share one, this one is shared between Warriors and Winged Beasts, and has the bonus effect that we can place a level 8 or lower Warrior or Winged Beast monster from your graveyard on top of the deck, which is okay. Next up we have our Romin skill. This skill can be used if the only monsters in your deck are Psychic type, and there's at most one level 7 or higher non-light monster in your deck. If I'm at none, return one card from your hand to your deck, so already we're -1ing to use this effect, and if you don't control Can Read D, you must also reveal one level 7 light monster in your hand, then we add one level 1 or level 4 monster with 100 defense or less from our graveyard to our hand, at most one effect monster per duel. So once per duel, we can use this to bring back probably a Romin pick, which is probably our best bet. Other than that, we have to bring back non-effect monsters, and there is one very specific non-effect monster that we're going to be expecting to bring back. But still, this card doesn't plus us. Unlike the last Psychic skill that we got that does plus us every time we go into a boss monster, this card trades evenly. We give up a card from our hand to get a card back from our graveyard, which is not great, especially when Psychics have never been in the best spot. And the boss monster we're getting is also a little bit lackluster in Can D. So it's 2500 attack, which is a decent stat line, but as we've seen with Esperard, that isn't enough, unfortunately, to make it really good and playable. But we can return one face-up monster with 500 or less attack from our field to the hand. This turn, while this card is face up, you cannot tribute summon monsters with 1500 or more defense in attack position. So basically, we put a card back in our hand, and then we basically floodgate ourselves into not being able to summon out a monster with a lot of defense. And this is in here to stop us from looping. But the idea is all effects in Rush are soft once per turn. So if we get the monster off the field and resummon again, we can use that effect again. So the two cards that really come to mind with Can Read D is going to be Romin Pick, which means we could summon it, use its effect, put it back into our hand, and then summon it again and use it again. And the other one would be Future Diviner, which does, again, do a similar thing, lets us draw and then discard cards. But technically, you could do this with any 500 or less attack Psychic monsters, but again, there aren't that many really worth using. But our skill does let us take any monster that has 100 or less defense, and I think the card that we're primarily going to be targeting with this is going to be Can D. So Can D is a bit unassuming. This card does become half of a lot of fusions when fusions do eventually come out, so it will be a little bit more useful then. But specifically, there are some spell cards that gain bonus effects when being used with Can D, such as Jamp Set or Jampy Set. So place one level 2 or lower Psychic type normal monster from your graveyard on top of your deck. Place one face up level 8 or lower monster from your opponent's field on top of the owner's deck. So already very, very good. Just immediately get rid of one of the boss monsters. Then if you placed Can D on top of your deck to meet the requirement, you can shuffle up to 2 monsters from your opponent's graveyard into the deck. Now Grave Hate is already really good, but notably, if we don't want our opponent to draw out the same monster we've just stacked to the top of their deck, we can use the second part of this effect just to shuffle their deck, so that they aren't guaranteed to see that boss monster again. But this does have multiple uses. And another of the good jam cards is Jampy Check, which is back row hate for Psychics, which doesn't just put cards back to the top of the deck. So if we have 2 or more face-up Psychic type monsters on your field, including a normal monster, look up to 2 face-down spell traps on your opponent's field, destroy one of them. Then if you have Can D face-up on your field, you can gain 1000 life points. Now again, the Can D part of this effect doesn't really matter, but 1000 life points is quite nice just to get for free. And now we start getting into some spice. Bluei Skill. So this skill can be used if your deck, excluding the extra deck, which again is future-proofing this card because we will be getting fusions eventually, contains 7 or more level 5 or higher monsters, and the only monsters in your deck with 1700 or more attack or defense are level 8 light monsters with 1600 or more defense. This is worded very deliberately to not let you play Dragias. Can be activated on turn 2 onward if you control no face-up level 8 or higher monsters. Return one card from your hand to the deck, reveal one Kyberman in your hand, add one Blue Eyes Bright Dragon from your deck to your hand. So Kyberman doesn't really need an introduction. This card's been around in Speed forever. Send this face-up card from your field to the graveyard, special summon a Blue Eyes Bright Dragon from your hand. Now, this does hint at the fact that we might be getting a Blue Eyes bundle. I would expect it to come out. I think we're at the point now where Blue Eyes Bright Dragon isn't really going to have a huge impact on the meta as an individual card. And being able to use Kyberman to get it out is a nice, cute little combo, but the primary reason to actually play Kyberman is to get the search for Blue Eyes Bright Dragon. Now this is a very modern, like this card only came out, I want to say like 3 or 4 months ago, in a Blue Eye structure deck that came out in the physical game. So this card's name becomes Blue Eyes White Dragon while in the hand, which means we can summon it using Kyberman. We can send the top card of our deck to the graveyard. This turn, this card name becomes Blue Eyes White Dragon, and again, this is how the Blue Eyes work, is you have a lot of cards that change their name to be Blue Eyes White Dragon, so that you can use them as fusion material to make Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. And then, if we have a face-up Legend Normal monster on the field, you can destroy one face-up level 8 or lower monster on your opponent's field, so a very, very powerful effect. Becomes a 3000 attacker, and as long as we have a Legend monster, we get to pop something on the field, which is very, very good, as well as the fact this card does also have 2500 defense, which means it's not susceptible to something like Shield and Sword. So Blue Eyes Bright Dragon, really, really strong, and I actually kind of expect Blue Eyes to have the highest potential of decks from this box of being really, really good based on the skills that we've seen so far. Just the idea of being able to summon out Blue Eyes Bright Dragon this early does seem really, really good, and if we do manage to get this effect off and we do get the Blue Eyes bundle and we actually have access to the card Blue Eyes without being attached to a skill, could be really, really good. The primary weakness I see is, again, the deck as we see it at the moment doesn't really have a good way to get to your opponent's life points. They'd have to find access to something like Pierce. I don't think the deck would get something like Burst Stream of Destruction, especially since Dark Magician still hasn't even got their 1000 Knives. And our final skill, Archive Skill 1. This skill can be used if the only level 5 or higher monsters in your deck are Pyro-type monsters that are either normal monsters or Fire Effect monsters with 0 defense. Now this is worded a bit strangely, but this is because there are a lot of non-Pyro Fire monsters that are kind of in their own archetype. So there's Fire Dark monsters, which are all kind of part of a space archetype, an outer space archetype, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But requirement none. One face-up level 5 or higher monster on your field gains 600 attack, again with that 600 attack boost, until the end of the turn. Then, if it's a level 7 or higher monster that was normal summon this turn, you can add one Pyro-type normal monster with 1300 or less attack from your graveyard to your hand. Now, this is an interesting effect, because 600 attack is nice. It's not a huge amount, but it's a nice little boost, as well as the fact we do get a body back, and that body can be used for a number of different things, such as just summoning out and having the body, summoning out and tributing it off to get out a big body, or it could be for extra spice the Elite Noodle Ninjas effect. So this is a card, again, I predict will be in the next box. 2400 attack, 0 defense. Send one face-up Pyro-type normal monster from your field to the graveyard, inflict 1000 damage to your opponent, draw one card. It's a very simple effect, but it's a very decent effect. Being able to burn your opponent for 1000 and get that draw is pretty good. As well as the fact we don't have to use this effect, we could just get the body back and summon out and leave it on the field. But using the skill, this card becomes 3000 attack, which is pretty good. As well as the fact that further down the line, this card will be half of the fusion. So with that, that is all of the leaked skills all gone through. And we've kind of already gone through what we expect to be in based on these skills. But there are some other cards that I almost do expect to see going forward. So first things first, we have 2 Luke skills, 2 Gavin skills, and a Romin skill. That is all of our main characters except for the primary main character being yugioh. So I would expect there to be some sort of yugioh boss monster in here, but it could be as part of a structure deck. That wouldn't surprise me too much, especially since all of the structure decks we've gotten so far have included yugioh boss monsters. But also, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Blue Eyes cards be introduced in a structure deck as well. So my prediction would be that either the Blue Eye stuff or a yugioh boss monster is going to be in the next structure deck. And my top picks for which of Yugioh's boss monsters might be are going to be number 1, Savage Claw Tiger. So this is an Earth monster, which again would fit the theme because we keep getting a new yugioh boss monster, all the different attributes, and then we get a road magic to match the attribute. We haven't had an Earth one yet. So this is a 2300 attack, level 7 Beast Warrior. We can send the top card of our deck to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the number of face-up level 7 or higher monsters on your field times 400. So if it's just itself on the field, it becomes 27. If we get another, it becomes 31. If we have all 3 level 7 monsters, then it becomes 35. This card basically only really saw play in Beast Gear and very, very lightly, but it's still a good effect. It's kind of like a Seven's Road Light type effect, and it's not terrible. Another option would be another one of Yugioh's Earth boss monsters, Bascule the Moving Fortress. So this card does have a little bit of synergy with some of the other cards that are coming out, because assuming the chairs come out, and obviously we already know we're getting Semi-Ruler, Bascule is another monster that has 0 attack and quite a lot of defense points. During the turn you normal summon this card, send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard, change this card's battle position, then special summon 1 Earth attribute normal monster from your graveyard face up to your field. So the effect is nothing crazy, but it is quite nice to be able to get an extra body out. Again, 0 attack monster is not the best, but if you do use something like Semi-Ruler, it's not bad. And finally, my prediction for Yugioh's boss monster that could be in the next structure deck is actually a bit of a weird one, and this is a maximum monster, Hyper Engine Vast Vulcan. So Vast Vulcan is one of the worst maximum monsters. It's never really been that great, but that's why I think they could stick it into a structure deck. I think having a maximum structure deck would be kind of cool, as well as the fact if you give this guy a skill, maybe it'd actually be quite good. But his effect is the same as every other middle piece. This card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's trap card effects. His left effect is one face-up monster on your opponent's field loses 800 attack to the end of this turn. So 800 is a decent chunk, but it's not a ton, right? Then we can destroy a field spell on your opponent's field, which is probably not going to have one because there aren't that many good field spells to run. And then if we did destroy a field spell, burn your opponent for 800. So most of the time, this is just going to be one of your opponent's monsters lose 800 attack. And the right part of the effect is send the top card of the deck to the graveyard. One face-up monster on either side of the field loses attack equal to its level times 100 until the end of this turn. Then inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's level times 1000. So the maximum this will ever be is 10 because maximums are level 10. So if opponent does have a maximum, we could burn them for 1000, weaken their maximum monster by 1000 attack, weaken it by a further 800, and then attack over it with our 3300 Vast Vulcan. Now notably, if our opponent is on 1000 or less, we can also use the right effect to target ourselves and then just burn our opponent for 1000 that way. That is another option. But again, I don't know if Vast Vulcan is worth putting in a box. I definitely don't think this card is UR worthy, so I think a structure deck might be a good place for it to come out. And finally, we have the other Garden of Curiosity duelists. We did talk about these earlier when we talked about Seat Bastion, but these are kind of Nail's underlings, and the first one is going to be Clean Beret Colonel Mott. This is used by Buff Grimes in the show. This card is very underwhelming. 2300 attack, level 7. Your opponent has a face-up, level 7 or higher monster on the field. Place one Bleach Mortar from your graveyard on top of your deck. And what is Bleach Mortar? It's an okay spell. One face-up, level 7 or higher monster on your opponent's field loses 500 attack to the end of this turn. Then burn your opponent for 500. So we can put this card back on the top of our deck. And that's it. That's not particularly interesting. But Bleach Mortar itself is not bad because of Wash Sprayer the Clean Skatir. And this card is actually a little bit better. If we normal summon this card this turn and your opponent has a face-up level 7 or higher monster, we can shuffle Bleach Mortar from our graveyard into the deck and draw one card. So this is a nice little +1. Again, it's not anything crazy, it's not overpowered, it's not ridiculously strong, but it's an okay little combo you can use with Bleach Mortar. And Clean Beret Colonel Mott I don't really think have a place in there. I think the only way Colonel Mott becomes remotely good is with a really, really good skill, which I just don't see them getting, so we'll have to see what happens with that. The next one is Schrodinger and his Odd Eyes Twin Tail Cat. Another really, really bad boss monster. So these are cards, again, that we expect to be like SRs or maybe even just rares. But this monster, 2200, pretty low attack. If we have Red Eyes Black Cat and Blue Eyes White Cat face up on the field, we can add Lost Cat from our graveyard to our hand. So Blue Eyes White Cat is just a level 1 monster with barely any attack, and Red Eyes Black Cat is an even worse normal monster. Lost Cat, on the other hand, is a bit of a weird trap card. So when your opponent's monster declares an attack, your opponent declares a card type, monster, spell, or trap. It sends the top card of the deck to the graveyard. If it was not the declared card type, negate the attack and inflict 300 damage to the opponent. So 99.9% of the time, people are always going to declare monster with this. Then when they mill a monster, nothing happens. But on the off chance they do mill a spell or trap card in that case, the attack would be negated and you get to inflict 300 damage. The reason I don't absolutely detest this card is because this is one of the few ways you can actually use to stop an attack from Magnum Overlord. So at least it has a chance to save you, but not a very good one. Overall, not very good. The next card is going to be Cosmic String New Dryad, which is used by Celestia, who is already an NPC duelist in Duel Links. So we're not expecting to get the character, for sure, but we could still see her cards. So if Outer Space is face up on the field, you can send 2 Pyro-type monsters from your hand to the graveyard to destroy all face-up level 7 or lower monsters on the field. Now notably this is a Dark Pyro monster, which means we wouldn't be able to use it with the other Pyro skill. But this effect is okay. It's a bit heavy costed, right? We have to have Outer Space on our field. We have to then send 2 Pyro-specific monsters from our hand to the graveyard, and we only destroy 7 or lower, so it doesn't even destroy level 8s. Outer Space, in case you're wondering, as well as a field spell. While this card is face up on the field, all face up level 4 or lower monsters on the field lose 300 attack and defense, so it's not particularly interesting. New Dryad is okay, 2500 body, the effect is a little bit situational, but it can be pretty good, so there is at least some potential there that this could be okay, but again, I really think all of the cards that we've just talked about would really need some sort of really good skill to actually make them good. So that is all of the skills gone through. That's all of our predictions of what we think might be in the next box. I think it does contain a little bit of everything. Across these skills and our predictions, we have given support to Yugioh, Luke, Gavin and Romin. We have some DM nostalgia bait, as well as introducing some other weaker cards that we do expect to come along at some point in Buff Grimes, Schrodinger's Celestias and Seek Bastions cards. So I think it would make sense to receive all of these. And I think overall, I'm quite happy with these predictions. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.